This is GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly podcast about gaming, technology, and play. Your hosts are Michael Martin, Andy Piper, and Michael Rowe. The thoughts and opinions on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests alone and are not the opinions of any organization which they have been, are, or may be affiliated with. This is episode 527, AI Taco Trolls. Hello, welcome again to an episode of GamesAtWork.biz, your weekly technology podcast. My name is Andy Piper. I'm a technologist. I live in the UK, and I am here with my two co-hosts this week, Mr. Michael Rowe and Mr. Michael Martin, who are all the way on the other side of the Atlantic. But we try to get together virtually when we can and talk tech. So, Michael Martin, how are you?
Fantastic. And it's great to have some fun times to connect up with you. Michael, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Really enjoyed the show last week. Even your review of a product that I wanted to review last week.
Well, it was on the list of things to talk about. So,
yeah, and that's what
Michael,
happens when you have to bail at the last minute.
Jump in.
Let me do it 30 seconds about it. Anyway, glad to be here. Glad to be back. Photodome was an app that I was beta testing over the summer with the developer. And I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago on a show that I don't talk about beta tests of unreleased software.
Mm-hmm. You did? So that was the allusion to this one. Oh.
So
or
that
it
was
could have been
one
something else that you're not talking about, right?
There are multiple that I've been doing. That one just came out, and I was really excited about it, even though the video that the person had posted on Mastodon was like the worst example. And I was listening to you guys focus in on that video.
Well, how else are we supposed to know? We're looking at what people talk about, right?
Exactly. So it's really cool. It reminded me a lot of long play. As a discovery mechanism to find stuff you haven't looked at a long time. So what the app does, it has like 5 or 6 different methods of displaying the pictures.
Nice.
One that I actually find is fun is bubbles, which then bounce into each other, which would be even more confusing, to your point last week. But yeah, you can point it at your library, say, give me 150 random pictures. You can do all kinds of different subdivisions or filters, etc. And it's just a really fun, immersive way to look at your picture library. So I enjoy it.
So thank you for that more clear description of what we were looking at. In our defense, I think I used it as an excuse to talk about how old I'm getting in terms of my ability to
like I said, I enjoyed it.
changing interfaces. But as you know, I sadly haven't had enough time to play with the Vision Pro, and you've do a lot of work with yours. So that's a really helpful perspective to receive, and I'm glad to hear it's a nice app. I'm guessing that you are a beta tester for a number of those kind of number of apps on that ecosystem. And
yes.
I find it interesting as well that you raise the long play, comparison. We've seen a few things recently particularly on Apple platforms where people are taking different approaches to discovery, because it turns out we've been using our systems for a long time. We've got a lot of stuff we're very likely to forget about or not really remember how to get back to. Where did we leave that thing? So I was listening to I think a couple of weeks ago when the two of you were recording together talking about that VHS app. And we talked to Michael and I
tested that one too
as well, talked about that radio app. So yeah, I think it's fun. So thanks for Michael for doing a little retrospective on last week. That's useful. So let's take a little drive together, shall we? And let's drive into our next topic, which is dealing with an article about Taco Bell from The Verge. And this one has some fun pieces to it, including a very short video, which, again, got to watch the video, that shows how you control the speech-to-text point-of-sale system here.
Yeah, I saw this one, and it was such a clickbait headline, and what it really is to me is bad testing. not understanding your edge cases, and not understanding your users, because they rolled out an LLM-based AI agent for their drive-through, and people would do things like order 18,000 cups of water through the drive-through, and because it's an AI agent, it wants to be positive and great. That's wonderful. Yeah. So I thought it was hilarious.
Well, and it's apparently something that's not, brand new. They've been testing it, according to another article I found from this time last year, August of 2024, that they've been testing it for 2 years. And we've seen other examples too of point of sale systems like this. I remember one at Hardee's multiple years ago that they would try to offload the person at the store. So when you said, "I would like 2 biscuits and a coffee," if you did not say it with clear enunciation, you would not get through to the person to actually get the order placed. And Michael, you solved problems like this, as I recall, because you were one of the voice testers eons ago. So your voice gets through more often than not when you ask for stuff.
Back on Via Voice back in the 90s.
That's a really interesting example.
My voice is actually in the data set.
Yes, that's hilarious. Actually, yeah.
But what's really funny to me is it reminds me your point, Michael. There was I think it was The Electric Company, which was a kids show on PBS many years ago. I think it was Electric Company that had the parrot behind the door, and the guy knocks on the door, and the parrot goes, "Wait," and the guy goes, "It's the plumber. I've come to fix the sink." And he waits and he waits and waits, and he knocks on the door again, and the parrot goes, "Wait."
Yeah.
And the guy eventually dies on the steps because he's talking to this thing that doesn't listen to him. But yeah, edge cases are fun, as we know about from a Google example too.
Yes, we do. So let's go there. A little bit out of order, but that works. So the Google example is talking about a restaurant where the Google AI has hallucinated daily specials on behalf of said restaurant, and people start walking in asking for the daily special, and the good folks of the restaurant are like, "Look," they even had to put signs up that says, "We cannot honor daily specials that basically Google hallucinated."
Didn't create?
Yeah. So
hold on, I gotta pick on it. AIs don't hallucinate; they're wrong. Hallucinate implies intent. It is wrong.
Yeah, and the other element of this is that the people are being encouraged by Google to use through AI search results being the first thing, and of course them doing a tremendous amount of advertising for Gemini as part of their product launches to use this kind of thing, and I think it's funny, but it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be these levels of inaccuracy unless there's some form of human review step here that's going to stop this. It does seem unbelievably annoying. I can imagine if I was on the other end of it. I was thinking about that thing we talked about within the last month or so, where a tech company added a feature because Google, or one of the AIs, maybe it was ChatGPT, kept saying this was a feature of their platform. I can't imagine a restaurant, partly because everybody potentially would get a different daily special when they talk to the AI, that they can honor these things. It's ridiculous.
Well, not only that, I mean, just think about it. Take AI out of the picture, and let's say you maintain a website for your own restaurant, and you didn't go to it today and update it with today's daily special. So you don't actually have the food from yesterday's daily special. So you'll have to explain to customers when they show up, "Oh man, we didn't update the web page." And so this is that on steroids with made up stuff that you may not even serve, right? I would like the rock sandwich, the one filled with gravel.
That was the other thing. We know that it's done that previously with food recommendations, and therefore why wouldn't you expect why would you expect it not to repeat that kind of behavior? It's very problematic.
Well, and we did talk about this before too, and which is if you rely upon that summarization as that first thing when you go to a web page or Google search, you're not getting necessarily the content. You're getting a summarization of it, right?
Well, and we go even further back through this cycle of AI applied to tech for convenience, to the Apple intelligence notification summaries, where they were muddling up and confusing BBC News stories and providing factually inaccurate summaries of stories to the point where the BBC basically said to Apple, "Stop doing it."
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of put a bow on it, not only that, we've been talking since this LLM-based AI craze that you still need to check the answers. You still need to check the answers. You can't assume they're right.
Yeah.
And so it should have a reference. We check the company's webpage, here's a reference, and you, the user, need to click on and go to it.
And by the way, you, the listener of our podcast, over the course of many years in some cases, but in the other cases, maybe just the first episode, always check our references. Make sure that what we've just said isn't complete nonsense by going and looking at our show notes, clicking through the links, checking the stories that we're talking about are being summarized accurately. As Michael just did earlier in the show with the Photodome. He came along and said, actually, what I was expecting you to talk about was this experience.
And by the way, we are not ad supported, and there are no ad trackers on our page.
Absolutely. So,
that we know of. That we know of.
Yeah, no AI has inserted any ad trackers that we're aware of.
All right, so let's keep on trucking, so to speak, a little bit more down the road here on these AI stories, and we have this one from Wired that's quoting a piece of research from Stanford, fellow ACC school, that deals with the adoption of AI and impacting the job prospects of some of the youngest workers in the age range of like 22 to 25. It kind of relates a little bit to what we were just talking about here, because if you're in customer service, right? So maybe, answering questions or taking an order for someone, that's a use case we just talked about with Taco Bell, right?
Well, when I read this article, it reminded me of a discussion I had with a mentor more than 20 years ago, whose job it was to ensure that the high-level tech jobs stayed local and that we moved the low-level tech jobs to the lowest-cost country at the time. And he was like, you don't have to worry about it, you're safe. And my reaction was, yeah, but that means there's no new hires coming in learning tech behind me. And that's exactly the way I read this same story from Wired. It's like, yeah, the highly skilled, mature, late career people might be safe because they're unique, but you need to start off as an entry-level position to get there. And if you get rid of the entry-level positions, there's no path.
Interesting. And it's funny, I'm just looking at the paper right now, and I'm realizing that on Friday, the 29th of September, which is today as we record, there's actually going to be a little bit of a Zoom where Eric Brynjolfsson, who we also know about, is going to be moderating a panel talking about this very thing. How about that? So cool. Signing up.
There's
yeah, go back in time.
Well, you can sign up too for back in time, but that's how it goes.
There's a somewhat related story that I'm going to throw into our list of links, but we don't have to talk about in detail. I was reading today from the Register, which is about older programmers using AI more than you might expect, but then having to check it more or doing a lot more validation of the outputs. And so I thought that was also interesting from the perspective of what Michael was just talking about that progression from entry level through to senior, or just being more experienced with what you're doing. Even if you're at the senior level, you may be using the tools because they're tools. They can be tools. Right. They can be useful.
Tools can be used for good.
But you need to go ahead and make sure that they're not generating stuff that you would be embarrassed to put forward as your own. That it is genuinely useful.
Yep. So this next story is a little bit darker, and I'm personally not going to go into the darker aspects of this, but there are a couple of articles from Futurism and from The Verge and others talking about how what you put into your chat sessions with ChatGPT, OpenAI, others, that it in some cases needs to be passed along to the police and others. And so you're right, Andy, in what you just described too, about how you need to be very thoughtful about how you're using such tools and what you confide or use around them as you walk through them.
I think it's challenging because a lot of the marketing pushes people to think of these things as not tools but friends, as
your own personal assistant,
chatty things that you can interact with. They're given human-like voices and personality styles, ways of responding to you to make it more comfortable for you to interact with. But they are tools, they are technologies, they are not free from errors. And they may lead you down some dark paths depending on how you interact with them. The particularly upsetting part about this story from Futurism that I think we picked up earlier in the week between the three of us is that it has just been updated today with a link at the very top to an additional story. So the story here is that OpenAI was going to or has been reporting chats to the police or other authorities if certain content met some kind of criteria, I'm assuming. So the story earlier in the week was, just so you know, everybody, and also because OpenAI want to demonstrate some level of responsibility, one would assume they talk about the fact that yes, there have been these stories about people having these psychoses or other issues. And by the way, they've written this blog post now talking about the fact that they're scanning messages for certain types of content and escalating worrying content to relevant staff for review or reporting it to the police. And unfortunately, the update at the very top of this story refers to a brand new story that came out today as we record on the 29th of August. Yep. About a really horrifying story about a man unfortunately suffering from psychosis and killing himself and his mother. There's an element of, well, that was something they did as in some level of self-defense or get ahead of that story. We really need to think about this, and I had a little rant last week on the show with Michael Martin about responsibility, people taking responsibility for the things they build rather than just building a thing and throwing it over the wall. And I apologize to everybody for my little rant there last week, but again, I think this is the kind of thing where unintended consequences, not just of building the cool thing, but shipping the cool thing and marketing the cool thing in such a way that it lowers people's defenses and encourages them to use it more in ways that may not have been expected. We know that emergent behaviors can lead to really fun and interesting new ways of doing things. Good stuff we like. Unfortunately, the flip side of that is can lead to horrendous outcomes that we never would have expected or wanted. I'm certain that nobody working at OpenAI would have wanted this outcome. Absolutely certain that that's not the kind of thing that they signed up for to build their technology. But need to be taken seriously. Need to have some ethics. Need to have some responsibility. Need to slow things down sometimes in order to take those more serious and responsible steps. So there is my follow-on small rant.
I had two reactions to the first story and the second story when I saw it. The first reaction to the first story was some advice I heard somebody say probably a couple of weeks ago, that you shouldn't say anything in a chat that you wouldn't be willing to stand in the middle of the street and tell everybody, right? As kind of a guardrail on yourself, right? And, that's maybe a little extreme because I don't know many people are going to stand in the middle of the street and say, include Swift UI, struck, blah, 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 and read their code out loud, right?
Yikes.
But at the same time, asking, questions around self-harm or something like that. You probably wouldn't do that on a public square either. And so from the standpoint of providing information that might cause a privacy issue, right? These things are scanning and identifying things and then reporting them to the police. That's something that is a lesson. The second part on the responsibility side that came to mind was putting guardrails in place is fine, but what I tend to see right now with a lot of the AI tools is they're being developed by the same organizations whose number one growth metric was engagement.
Yeah.
And engagement means keep the people in the tool as long as possible.
More eyeballs,
and
more
that
investors.
metric is probably wrong.
Yeah.
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 And the second article deals with an idea of putting in parental controls, which I think is a really terrible way to just try to sidestep this, right? Because anyone who's dealt with kids in any capacity knows that parental controls are probably the easiest thing to sidestep in the world, right?
Well, not only that, it's also a way to wash your hands of responsibility for providing the platform, saying, well, it's the parent's job.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have to do anything. I don't need any tools other than putting it on the parent.
And there is, I think, there should be, personal opinion, an element of responsible societal behavior as well as responsibility on the part of those businesses, corporations, and so on that are building those products. So from the perspective, for example, of internet regulation, I personally strongly believe that parents and children and society should evolve in such a way that people understand appropriate behaviors and acceptable access and so on, rather than relying on that to be legislated and regulated everywhere. But on the other hand, it's in the terms of products like this, it also needs to be regulated and thought about more carefully.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, let's kind of get we talked about in our pre-production show a little bit of a palate cleanser.
Yeah.
There's a story that deals with I love this phrase, the historical large language models.
I absolutely love this. I missed this when we shared it earlier in the week, and this is phenomenally interesting. My degree and background is in history.
So your name was written on this article, Andy.
and somehow I totally missed this. So I love the little byline at the very top of the article. It's on Ars Technica, hot GPU time machine instead of hot tub time machine. And this is describing a series of historical large language models, including projects such as Monad GPT, which is trained on 11,000 texts from 1400 to 1700 CE. Which can discuss topics using the 17th century knowledge frameworks, which I must check out at some point. There's one which generates classical Chinese poetry following ancient formal rules. This particular one, Time Capsule LLM, is trained entirely on text from 1800 to 1875 London, which is almost precisely one of my areas of study from 30 years ago. So I must go down and have a look at this in more detail. But as you would expect, because they are, as we know, fancy autocomplete machines, if you throw in a sentence and tell it to complete the sentence, a sentence like, it was the year of our Lord 1834, ... it will then generate a interesting and potentially totally real set of text related to that period. Really good. I love it. And I'm quite interested in this because I'm a lot less concerned about the copyright ownership and all of that kind of legal frameworks that we've discussed earlier. I think that it's interesting where you tune the model specifically within a time range, small amount of data, relatively small amount of data compared to the terabytes in the general purpose models, and really locking it into a time frame. You're much more likely to be able to prompt create the kind of linguistic responses you might have received from real humans at that time. Of course, it won't be exactly what a real human would have written, but it could look a lot like it. And I find that fascinating.
Very cool. I'm always going to check my Olama install and see if one of those models was available to be pulled down locally.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun. The thing that just grabbed me the most on this, Andy, was that you could ask it questions to like fill in a sentence, and then it might actually produce information that is relevant, it's historically significant, and there aren't individual documents that might be documenting that particular event, but there's enough there to go and discover something new, and that's what this article is about. So great fun stuff.
Way cool.
So we're kind of racing here to the closure, and there's a couple of things that we did want to touch on. You guys took a look at The Expanse, a game announcement trailer, and I'm wondering what y'all thought.
Michael
of it.
Rowe definitely took a look at this. It was not me. Michael's obsessed with The Expanse, so he's obviously the one that put this link in.
I enjoyed watching the series when it was on Sci-Fi, it then moved to Amazon. I've got the entire Blu-ray collection, the entire series, and I've been reading the books. It is fantastic. This gameplay trailer looks incredible. Enough said.
There we go.
Check it out.
And it looks like it's on so many different platforms that chances are you can play it.
Well, it doesn't exist yet. It's going to be on other platforms.
So closing things off for today, Andy, I think this came from you. This wonderful, wonderful piece of vinyl that when you spin this, you get to see some fun things on your record.
Yeah. So this is Leaving the World Behind on vinyl. It's a record. It's got a zoetrope printed on it, so that when the actual record spins, you get to see the kind of progression of the imagery. But the other cool thing is that there is an app associated with it called a Lumiscope, and you'll see stuff going on there. It's really fun. I love it. I think this is a really nice way of combining that retro feel that we get and enjoy from our vinyl collections with some of the more interesting recent AR stuff. So,
love it.
All right, so friends, with that, we are exactly at time. I don't know how we did it, but we did. We hope you enjoyed the show. We hope you give us some links to talk about, and you can find us right as you always do on gamesatwork.biz. See you, everybody.
See ya. Bye.
You've been listening to GamesAtWork.biz, the podcast about gaming, technology, and play. We are part of the Blueberry Podcasting Network, and would like to thank the band Random Encounters for their song, Big Blue. You can follow us at our website at GamesAtWork.biz.